Hello. My AC just kicked on like right as I was starting. So sorry. You're going to have little bits of sounds, very busy background because this is my room. I'm doing this from my bed with my foot propped up off to the side, but sitting up more than I was a couple of days ago. But I don't want you to have to keep waiting. So here we go. All righty. So we are going to jump right into chapter 11. Um, Ta-da! There we go. So here we go. I have a little sticky over here for some stuff so I don't forget to mention it. And I don't think you can see it, but if you can, there you go. Chapter 11, we're finally getting to some of the stuff that I'm like, basically the main reason I got the master's for nutritional science is literally for what we're covering now. So this is going to be the nutrition and chronic diseases. Here we go. Do you believe that what you eat and drink really make that much difference in how well or how long you live? Hmm. Some people do, some people don't. I'm going to tell you, yeah, it actually makes a huge difference in like everything. And it's probably the hardest one to adjust on people. And we've covered this a lot in class and through the previous videos. So we're going to talk about the stuff that scares people. When you're talking about nutrition and diet and stuff, the average person is only concerned about their weight. Don't know why. So much more to be concerned with than just your weight. And so that's what we're going to be talking about here. Skip right over these learning objectives. Chronic diseases. So an infectious disease is one thing, a chronic disease is another. Your infectious diseases are going to be the things that, you get from an infection, hence the name. Chronic disease basically is in your body. Both of these can be affected by your diet, what you are consuming, how much or how little, and that kind of stuff. And so pretty much the nutrients that you're taking in are helping your body decide what to do and giving them the power. So example, my current situation. This is not a disease that I'm dealing with. It's the recovery from the surgery, but my body is requiring a lot more right now to fix everything and to heal everything from the surgery. And so I am, goodness gracious, like nonstop hungry. I eat and then my stomach growls and I eat and then my stomach growls. And it's because my body is needing to utilize a lot. And I'm paying attention when I get weird cravings, like couldn't get enough potato one day and I really wanted a carrot. And I cannot tell you the amount of berries I've consumed. But all of these contain the nutrients that my body desperately needs in order to repair. So that's pretty much what we're going to talk about here, but we're talking in the case of diseases. So currently here, top causes of death are chronic diseases. And those are going to be heart disease, cancer, stroke, and diabetes. Heart disease and cancers are the absolute huge amount of what causes death for people. So just take a look at this. Anything in red, you can actually help control due to your diet. Let that sink in. Look at how huge that cancer part is. And I think it's safe to say almost everybody is terrified of cancer. And it's something that you really can help control somewhat with your diet. There you go. So chronic disease risk factors. Risk factors that you cannot modify: your age. If you're lucky, you're just going to keep getting older. That's the yay. But as you get older, things are breaking down. And as we've talked before, the older you get, the older all your parts are getting. And so they need to be repaired more often. In order for your cells to constantly refresh, repair, you need more nutrients. That's why over the age of 50, you tend to have an increased need for more protein. Family history, heredity. You can't control that. Your genes are your genes are your genes. But those epigenetics, that you can modify. So you might have the genes that have the markers for particular things, but you can actually control a huge part of this in how they express or don't express through your diet. Um, can't wait to get back in class because I finally watched all of that You Are What You Eat, a twin experiment, and I want to talk about it. And they actually talk about this. All right. Modifiable risk factors other than diet. So not diet, alcohol intake and physical inactivity. The more alcohol you're bringing in, the higher your risk for everything. The less active you are, the higher at risk for absolutely everything. Look at that. Even diabetes type 2 for not moving around enough. Here we have some more. Smoking. Smoking brings up your risk factor of 3 of the 5 here. And if you're curious what these are, that first one is basically your blood clotting up. The second one is high blood pressure. And then I think you know what diabetes and cancer and obesity are. All right, now diet and nutrition risk factors. Diet high in added sugars, clearly that adds to the obesity. What it doesn't show you is that the obesity leads to other factors that then affect cancers, diabetes, hypertension, and the I can't say it right, the clotting. All right, then we have your diet. High in saturated and trans fats, low in vegetables, fruit, and whole grains. Clogs everything up. One of the worst things for you, but that's like the average American diet. And you can ask around and you'll see so many people are like, oh yeah, well, I like to have blah, blah, blah. And then you ask them about vegetables and everyone's like, oh yeah, well, I had a potato. Technically a potato is a vegetable, yes. But if that is the only vegetable you ever eat, that's not good. Like seriously, you need, well, I've said it 8,027,000 times, you have to eat the rainbow, all the colors. And then diet low in vitamins and or minerals. That is really bad. And notice it almost perfectly matches that previous one. I know I skipped over the salty, I'm coming back. That other one, because if you're not consuming vegetables and fruit and whole grains, you are missing most of your vitamins and or minerals. And then, of course, diet high in salty and pickled foods. Some pickled foods is good. Too much, not good. It's all in moderation. So I am not saying don't eat pickles, don't eat olives, because good Lord, we know I'm still going to eat those too. But you don't eat a mass quantity. You have some and then take a break. Some, take a break. Because there's actually some good in there, but they are very high in sodium. And too much sodium causes issues. And if you remember when in Bio 123 covered osmosis, we talked a lot about the too much salt in your diet. All right, cardiovascular disease, CVD. This is terrifying, and this is the #1 cause of death. This is disease of the heart and blood vessels, leading cause of death in the United States. It's terrifying. And this actually is what killed my father when he was 43. So one to take note of. My mom has issues with all of this now. So that word that I keep messing up, feel free to say it yourself. This is the hardening of the arteries. No one is completely free of all these signs. No one. Hypertension and this are interrelated and accelerate each other. And as most people age, this gets worse and worse. Because what's happening here, when you've heard me talk about basically putting tar in your arteries and your veins and putting little speed bumps and glue, I've used so many different analogies. That's what this is. So when you're younger and you're not in control of your diet, or you're just eating what you want and you start to get all those bad habits and you're eating all the butter and all the fried and smoking and whatever, all of these things are starting to lay down the little bits of glue throughout your veins and arteries, and they don't go away. They just keep building. As you get older, they just keep adding. And that's why it's imperative to make sure that you start children off right. Stop with the excuses of, oh, well, it's just a treat. It's just this. I don't think most people would be giving their child poison as just a treat, but we do it on a regular basis, not realizing what we're doing. So all of us have stuff clogged up in our arteries and our veins. And as we get older, it just keeps getting more. So, it's the plaque development. That's what I was talking about, the foam cells, blood clot formation. This is what I'm talking about, where it's putting all those little things in there, making it fill up space. This is what starts to lead towards hypertension. That would be the high blood pressure. And in the bio classes, the way I normally explain this is you take a garden hose. We've all held a garden hose and you're like, la, 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 and the water's just, psh. And if you want it to go a little faster, you put your thumb over the end and it shoots it out harder, makes more of a pressure kind of thing. Well, that's pretty much what happens in your veins and arteries, because it's the same amount of volume that's going through, but when you have less space, it goes through harder. So the more plaque you have in your veins and arteries, the higher your blood pressure tends to go. Inflammation also here. That's literally the things are inflaming. They're swelling up. I have issues with the inflammation stuff, and it's part of why I've adjusted my diet to the degree I have. Here we go. Embolism, aneurysm, hemorrhage, heart attack. All of these are issues that can happen due to this. And it has a relationship with hypertension because this tends to add to the high blood pressure. Showing you how it begins. If you look at the picture where it says plaques begin to form, that's what I'm talking about, where it first starts throwing down those little bits of glue. But then as time goes on, it keeps adding a little bit more glue. So think about anywhere that you have some glue already. It's got these little parts sticking out that just want more. And so the next time the glue comes through, boop, it catches and it sticks. And eventually it fills up, so there's almost no space going through there. This is where a lot of people end up having to have different medications or operations in order to help clear them. Sometimes people can actually get an operation to help try to clear out some of the plaque formation, but it has to be really bad for them to do that. Other people are on medications. Some is blood thinner in order to help the blood go through easier. Or they have this other one, and I, for the life of me, can't remember what it's called. But it basically makes the blood slippery. So it's like whoosh through it a little bit faster. If you look at the bottom picture, the one in the square, that's actually showing you the inside of an artery wall of how it's all clogged up. And again, this is how come it leads to hypertension. These are major risk factors for your heart disease. What cannot be modified? Again, your age. And if you're male, men tend to have more heart disease than women. And then family history. What can be modified is everything, like literally everything other than who you are. Your diet modifies your cholesterol level. Your cholesterol level modifies your chance of heart disease. The obesity, notice where it says especially central obesity. That means most of your weight is in your center. So somebody who has like that huge, huge stomach, like they look pregnant even when they're not pregnant, or the spare tire, they tend to have a higher risk of heart disease and a lot of other stuff versus someone who gains the weight all over. I almost say globally, but we're not a globe, but you know what I mean. Not moving around increases. Smoking increases. And it shouldn't just say cigarette smoking. Any kind of smoking actually increases it. It specifies cigarette smoking because cigarettes contain nicotine. Nicotine is glue and poison, like literally. You can kill somebody with just nicotine. I don't know if you knew that, but you can. That's why in a chemistry stock room, any time there's an experiment with nicotine, the nicotine has to be kept under lock and key because it's a poison. But nicotine is, every time you smoke a cigarette or vape that contains nicotine, it's like somebody going through there and just lathering a layer of glue through your veins and arteries. Notice excessive alcohol consumption and high intake of sodium. Yep. So all of these things. Now, what is the relationship between hypertension and that, which is the, hardening of your veins and arteries? We've already talked about this. The more your plaque builds up in your veins and arteries, the higher the rate of your blood pressure because you're just closing up the areas. And then they start building on each other because the worse your blood pressure gets, the more damage happening to the artery walls, which make it more likely for, well, my apologies for this visual, more likely for a blowout. And so that could be that when the pressure is super strong, it could rip through a wall. It could knock a big clot loose, and that clot goes like woo through that whole super highway system. And where that clot lands can cause a lot of different issues. Um, it's scary. So seriously, blood pressure, you really have to keep an eye on that. Blood lipids, these are those cholesterol levels. This is one of the reasons why every single person needs to get blood work done. You need to be keeping an eye on this. Even if you're 18 years old, you need to keep an eye on this because once it starts going up, it's a lot harder to go down. And once it's been up at a certain level for a period of time, it's probably not going to get all the way down. So your total blood cholesterol should be less than 200. Your LDL, that's the bad cholesterol, that needs to be less than 100. Your HDL, which is the good cholesterol, should be over 60. And triglycerides need to be less than 150. You've got your borderline and you're unhealthy. I know a lot of people who get their blood tested and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing great because I'm in the borderline area. I'm not, I'm okay." And then it will be something like their triglycerides are 198. Dude, you're this close to being listed as the unhealthy, and that's harder to come back from. So you should get your blood checked. Well, we're going to talk about the A1C in just a minute too, but get the whole blood panel and take a good look and don't make excuses. Quit with the whole, but it's just. It's not a just, not if you really want to be healthy and you want to live a nice long life without everything breaking down. I've been having a lot of these talks with my mom, so there you go. Recommendations to reduce your CVD risk, your cardiovascular disease risk. I really hate that manage lifestyle changes is in their little thing at the bottom. And the fact that this is just their PowerPoint means they did this wrong. Anyway, you need to treat the existing diseases and disorders because anything that you have going wrong in your body keeps putting more strain on your body. So you really have to keep up with that. Lose weight, unless of course you're skinny. But doing that whole, but I love my full figure frame, you might, you know, and we're not body shaming. But the truth of the matter is obesity and being too much overweight is unhealthy. It's not just a visual thing. It's actually putting too much strain on a huge amount of your body. You need to be physically active. Don't smoke. You should just not even bother drinking alcohol, but it says control alcohol intake. So little bit, little. Knowing your family history is important because like knowing how my father passed and then watching what's going on with my mom helps me know that I am more likely to go towards this end. And so I know I need to make my changes, which of course goes to determine your risk. Know your blood pressure. Don't just go, "Oh, I'm pretty sure it's okay." Check it on a regular basis. Even if you just go to like Publix or whatever and use that machine that they have by the pharmacy, do it randomly. And when you go to the doctor, keep an eye. Recognize a heart attack. That's a big one. That's a big one. A lot of people don't know the signs and it can show up differently for different people. I can tell you from a friend of mine, he passed a couple of years ago. When he told me he had had a heart attack at work, I asked him, how did he know? And he said, the elephant sat on my chest. And since then, I have actually heard a couple of different people say it felt like this huge pressure on their chest. So I'm going to say that's one of the big ones. But there are other signs as well. So just, I would check it out. Be careful of how much salt or sodium you take in. I'm not going to say reduce because that is a blanket statement and that's assuming that you're already consuming a lot. Some people are not. And you can go too low on that as well. So it's know how much is safe and keep an eye on how much sodium. Potassium, almost everybody needs more potassium. That's one that a lot of people just aren't getting enough of. And oh, it's so funny. You can see my raisins right there, right there. They're high in potassium. I didn't know that until not too terribly long ago. I just out of nowhere was craving them something fierce and I could not get enough raisins. And then later I found that they're high in potassium and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Um, if you have kidney disease, however, check with your doctor first about your potassium levels, just so you know. Follow a healthy dietary pattern. We've previously talked about the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet. Those are good. And then you could possibly do supplements and everything. However, it's best to do whole foods. How much does changing the dietary pattern lower the LDL cholesterol? Huge. When you get rid of or bring down your saturated fats, bring it down lower, you tend to reduce it almost immediately. If you're overweight and you start to lose some weight, poof, your LDL starts to go down too. And the big one, the soluble fibers, increase some fiber intake, whether or not you want to just drink the Metamucil drink, or I eat Triscuits, like I have a box of Triscuits over there, but different types of soluble fibers, that helps because what it's kind of doing when it's going through your body is it's almost like a tiny little magnet and it's picking up on some of it as it goes. Also, if you bring up your good cholesterol level, the good cholesterol level also kind of works like a magnet and kind of starts pulling some of that bad cholesterol and throwing it out. So that brings us to diabetes. Type 1 and type 2. We have talked about this previously in this course, I believe, and 100% we've talked about this in the bio 123 and 124. Type 1, not as common. This is what used to be called juvenile diabetes because most people who have this were born with it. It is an autoimmune disease. What happens is the body is not making the insulin, or it doesn't make enough. And so these are the people who can sometimes use like the insulin pump. The reason they're having an issue is because their body literally does not make enough, if any, insulin at all. Type 2 diabetes is the main diabetes. This is the one that you have control over. Your A1C starts to go up, and they warn you about this. That's a sugar level, which we're about to talk a lot about. As that's going up and they say, oh, you were in the pre-diabetes thing. Red flag, huge red flag. I wish I had thought about that and had a little red flag with me. That would have been kind of funny to go with a red flag. And I'm looking all over going, I know I own one, but I'm not doing it. Anyway, when the doctor says you are showing as pre-diabetic, that should be your wake-up call. Change. Immediate change. No excuses. No, but I like this, but my family that. But my parents, none of that junk. Just if you don't want to be diabetic, start making your changes right then and there. And the number one change is, well, there's more than one number one change, but you have to control that sugar. You've heard me go on and on about added sugars. Got to go. Get more active, drink more water, have a healthier diet. That kind of stuff. What type 2 diabetes is you have put so much crap in your body, it became resistant. It's like, more of that stuff. We don't need to worry about this anymore because you have oversaturated your poor body. And so what happens now when you have type 2 diabetes, it's doing this like crazy. And that's why you end up having to constantly check your blood sugar levels because it's out of whack. It doesn't know how to keep track anymore. And then you have to continuously medicate. Sometimes you need this medicine. Sometimes you need this medicine. Sometimes you need this and this medicine. Dude, it's because you broke it. How it develops. Insulin resistance causes glucose and insulin to build up in the bloodstream. And this is what knocks it all out. Causes all kinds of issues. This is pretty much the complications from diabetes is what killed my friend Jim about 2 years ago. And he had all of this at the bottom, the impaired kidney, eye, and nerve function, every bit of it. First, he started to get neuropathy in his hands and feet and started to lose feeling. Then he started having to use a walker. Then his eyes started to go, and then he had glaucoma. Then he was completely blind, and then his kidneys started to shut down. And through all of it, he still would not properly adjust his diet. He thought he was doing a little bit better because instead of drinking like, a 12 pack of Mountain Dew every day, he drank a 12 pack or more of Mountain Dew Zero or Diet Mountain Dew. Should have been drinking water. You don't need all that junk. He just kept wanting what he wanted as every part of him shut down. And I'm a little angry because he could have controlled some of that, but not really anything I can do about that. All I can do is tell you from watching him, that is not a way anyone wants to go. So, yeah. And I guess I'll go ahead and say insulin resistance, when I said a moment ago about that big gut, that's one of the first warning signs. If you're gaining weight solely in your stomach, that normally is an indicator of building up an insulin resistance because that's the first place it shows. Here's where I was talking about the A1C levels. If you get your blood checked, there's the fasting plasma glucose, and here's the numbers they should be. And then you've got your A1C. A1C can be checked fasting or not. Normally it's not. So if you go in there for just any kind of blood work, it normally has both of these listed. And I highly recommend, if you've never done it, I highly, highly recommend taking the time to look at your results. Most of them have it, I started to say published, but that's not the right word, on something like My Chart or something. It's an app, or you can log on to it on your computer and you can actually look at all your stuff and it will highlight, it'll tell you this is high. And you can normally click on the little eye and get more information. The more informed you are about your own personal stuff, the better you can make your choices. And I know that there's a lot of people who go through life like this and they just don't want to know. And they figure if they don't know, then it doesn't matter. But it does, because if your body is changing and shutting down, whether you're paying attention or not, it's still going to happen. So if you keep informed, then you can choose. So, like, say that you went to the doctor and you had blood work done and they told you that your A1C was 6.1. That's not all the way off the charts, but that's substantial. Walking in there and going, okay, it's 6.1. I have a little bit of space. You walk out of that, looking at that, thinking about it, and then you decide, do you still want the birthday cake? Do you still want the Coke? Do you want to go to Starbucks and get the latte, whatever, that has all this sugar? Or do you want to start trying to veer away and have fruit and increase your vegetables and start paying attention to the added sugars and changing up some stuff because you're thinking 6.1 is kind of scary? It's all up to you. You're the only one who can decide for you. But if you don't know your numbers, you're not making an informed decision. All right. So prevention and management. There you go. Know your family history. I know I have quite a bit of family that had diabetes, but each of them was type 2. And it was because they just had horrible, horrible dietary choices. If you're overweight, lose weight. That's what I've been working on. I think I've shown everybody the pictures because I was told I was pre-diabetic and I didn't want to go that route. So I changed. And there you go. Other than the past 2 weeks, we're pretty sure I'm physically active. I'm still trying to figure out how to be physically active with my leg like this. Dude, you guys would laugh. The number of leg lifts I do in bed and then randomly doing like this and this. I'm like, I'm trying to do whatever exercises I can in bed, but not being able to pace, I cannot convey. Anyway, choose your diet with care. Yes, that's the big one. That's the whole reason for this understanding nutrition. Control carbohydrate intake. I want to make sure this is crystal clear. Control carbohydrate intake means pay attention to what type of carbs. Do not just eat like a loaf of bread, But that doesn't mean don't eat good carbs. Remember, carbs are in fruits and vegetables. Just don't do all the over processed. Take care on how something is prepared, because your body desperately needs the carbohydrates for the energy. Because if you're not consuming enough carbs, then it's going to get the energy from somewhere else while trying to hold on to the stuff with the most energy. So that means it will hold on to the fat and start eating away at your muscle. You need carbohydrates in your diet, but you need to disengage from the crazy media push that carbs mean bad and that carbs mean bread and pasta. Bread and pasta contain carbs, yes, but that's not the only type of carb there is. And there are actually good for you breads and pastas. It's all about knowing what to look for. So whole grains are good. You don't want bleached or white, that kind of thing. Decreased saturated fats. Gosh, how many times have I said this? And increased omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s, they're the good ones. Omega-6, not so good. Determine ideal protein intake. We've talked about this one. You need the proper amount of protein in order to help break things down, but you don't want to overdo it, because overdoing it puts too much tax on your body. That's why in a previous lesson, you had to calculate your protein needs. Control alcohol intake. Again, alcohol is not good for you, period. And the only reason none of these things say avoid alcohol is because people aren't going to do it. Plain and simple. The more you learn about nutrition and you learn about the various things, I think I'm going to be talking about inflammation in just a moment, and I'll be bringing this back in. The more you learn about it, the less likely you're going to want to keep it in your system, because it's literally bad for your body. It is a toxin, but people like it. And so all of these are control, control, control. Knowledge check. If we were in class, I would be asking you this and then connecting the lines. This is how they do it. I found that confusing, so I did this for you. So type 1 diabetes, we've already talked about it. Pancreas can't produce it. Less common, requires insulin, and it's an autoimmune disease. So type 1 diabetes is what used to be known as juvenile diabetes. This is something you had no control over. Type 2 diabetes, you totally have control over it. This is insulin resistance. Sometimes it requires insulin, other times it doesn't. A lot of times your body's already kicking out way too much insulin. It's just not picking it up. This is the most common form of diabetes. Like, what was it? 95% of people who are diabetic have this type, and it's associated with aging. So the older you get, the higher the chance of getting this. Cancer, the scary one, the big C. We have talked about this in the previous biology classes. And we talk about the fact that you've got your regular replication, and then something goes wrong when it's replicating, like one cell is oopsed. And then the more that oops cell makes more of themselves, it gets larger and larger. So initiation, this is where it begins. So whenever you hear the word initiation, just think initiate, start. So this is the beginning. So we've got this one bad cell right here. This is your carcinogen. It is in the normal cell, alters that cell's DNA, and then that is what makes it start to replicate faster. Because remember, cancer cells replicate very, very quickly. Promoter cell, promotion. This is what's encouraging the initiator one to go faster. So the promoter enhances the development of the abnormal cells, which is going to form the tumor. As the tumor gets larger, you have benign, which means it's just holding in place. That's going to be like a skin mole. And I always do that because I have a mole right back here and one at the back of my neck. A skin mole is where your body did this, but then it trapped it in place. Malignant, I've always said malignant, maleficent, because, she was the bad witch. So malignant cell are the bad ones. So these guys aren't going to stay put. They will then eat their way down and then They lack adhesion, which means they can move on. So they get down into your lymph system or your blood system, and they take that superhighway and go wherever they want. And this is when the cancer spreads to the rest. So our cancer risk factors, there's all of these. I highlighted the ones I really want you to pay attention to. Chronic inflammation. I told you I was coming back to that. Diet, carcinogens in red and processed meats, cooking methods, fried foods, and I am going to talk about the iron too, but I didn't highlight it. So all of these are risk factors for various reasons. Environmental carcinogens, you can sometimes control that, sometimes can't. I talk a lot about that in environmental science because a lot of that has to do with stuff in your air, what's around you. So like the more often you're around somebody who smokes, that is an environmental carcinogen because you are breathing in their secondhand smoke. When it's really hot and you see that it's a not good air quality day, that is an environmental carcinogen. Air pollution, water pollution. There's a whole lot. But anyway, chronic inflammation, the reason this is a cancer risk, and this is part of why I work so hard to try to control my diet to try to bring the inflammation down, the more often you inflame, the more often that has to repair, the more likely you are to have an oops cell pop up. So anyone who has an inflammation issue really needs to try to keep it in check because the more it inflames, the more likely you are to eventually have this. It's like a statistics game. This is why, again, when I talk about my 600-pound life, anyone else notice how many times these people on the show also have cancer or some type of cancer? The obesity is one of them, but the obesity also tends to cause chronic inflammation, which also heightens that. It's really scary. Diet, 100% your diet. If you control your diet, you have a much better chance. I'm not saying you will never get cancer because there's always that chance. And then, of course, you've got your personal choices, like if you smoke or where you live and the environmental parts. But your diet plays a huge, huge key, big part because of that red meat and the processed meats. Anytime you get that, the sandwich stuff, pepperoni, any processed meat, super bad for your body, super bad. Red meat, one of the worst things for you. I understand that we live in the US and we're the beef people and how un-American and blah, 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 blah. And the way we have raised our cattle to be fast producing makes it even worse. But even if you're living on a farm and a very carefully raised cow and you eat it, the red meat still is not great for your body. It's just not. So if you consume it, try your hardest to do it in the smallest amounts. Know that it is a risk factor for cancer. Cooking methods. How you're cooking something. How many times have I told you fried food's not a good choice? We had that one big chart where it showed you how much extra nothing you get from frying your food. You can take something healthy, plop it in a vat of oil, take it out, and think that it's the best thing on the planet, but you have now taken something healthy, removed all the nutrients, and added nothing but bad. And the fried food increases your risk of cancer and increases your saturated fats, which increases your risk of your arteries hardening and having the clots and the cardiovascular disease. So while you might like it, really not a healthy choice. Oh, iron. I almost forgot. I was going to tell you about iron because that throws a lot of people. The reason iron is on here, and I wish they had put more into the slide, and I thought about adding it, but figured, I'll just talk about it. This is another big reason to have your blood checked on a regular basis to know where you stand, because anemia is often the first sign of cancer. The reason being, macrophages tend to take the iron from your blood and deliver it to the cancer cells because the cancer cells want it. It helps them grow faster. And so your body is getting depleted of iron because these macrophages are grabbing it and delivering it, grabbing it and delivering it. So it makes your iron level plummet. And so then you can end up being anemic, and it's because you have cancer somewhere. I think in a previous one, we talked about low iron levels. A lot of times it will be fatigue, and sometimes you'll be craving to chew non-food items like ice. The need, not just the you're drinking, there happens to be a little bit of ice and then you crunch on it, but like filling up a cup of ice specifically to chew on the ice because you just really want to chew on the ice. That tends to be a red flag that you're low in iron. Um, why the body makes you do that, I have no idea. I think it's fascinating, but it's true. All right. Recommendations and strategies for reducing cancer risk. Every one of these. Stop it with the fast food. Stop it with the pre-prepared stuff. Stop it with all the high fat, high sugar. Do not consume sugar sweetened beverages. This is huge. You need more water, unsweetened stuff, that kind of stuff. Be active. Did it change? Yeah, it did. Okay. You want to have at least 30 grams of fiber per day from food sources. You need fiber. Increase your fiber intake. Look at this one. For cancer prevention, it is best not to drink alcohol. Right there. This is what I keep saying. And the reason being, alcohol, again, it's a toxin. Your body is not meant to have it. This is why a lot of people get the flush. When you get the flush, that's inflammation. Bam, increases your risk. It is overtaxing your liver and your kidneys because your liver and your kidneys are trying to keep your blood clean. And every time you drink alcohol, it's letting your body know, hey, there's a poison in here. And then it's trying to clean it and clear it out. If you eat red meat, limit the consumption to no more than 3 portions per week. And that should be only 12 to 18 ounces cooked. So very little, if any, processed meat. So the crappy hot dogs, the pepperoni, that kind of stuff, not good for you. And they do not suggest doing the high dose supplements because it's not the same as eating the proper food. You get more than just vitamin A when you eat a carrot. You want all of the parts because they all work together. I think we covered that near the beginning of the term. So, knowledge check. We're supposed to match these topics with these. So I'm just going to jump there. So a toxic chemical, well, we're going to start with estrogen. Estrogen is already in the body. That is a promoter. So that promotes the mutation to happen. Obesity is the promoter. So that promotes it. So estrogen and obesity are things that might start where that one little cell might happen, that one little oops. But then you add in radiation or the toxic chemical, and that initiates it to proliferate. There you go. Nutrient drug interactions. Potential for harm. Yeah. Yeah. Every medication you take might cause issues. This is why you're not supposed to just take it all willy-nilly. And I don't know where that phrase willy-nilly comes from, but I kind of like it. Think about what you're taking. When a doctor, a reputable doctor, a good doctor prescribes you something, it's because they have already weighed the pros and cons. Anything you can control through your own personal choices is preferred. So saying that, well, I want to eat a fluffer nutter sandwich on white bread every day or every couple of days. For those who don't know, that would mean white bread, peanut butter, and marshmallow fluff. That is not a healthy choice. The only thing good in there for you is the peanut butter, and that's if the peanut butter is natural peanut butter without the added sugar. Some people want what they want more than they want to actually be healthy. So they decide, well, I'll just take this instead of changing their diet. That's not the healthiest choice. That's why when a doctor tells you you're pre-diabetic, your cholesterol's high, it's this, that, they don't immediately write you a script. They tell you you need to ... And then the average person ignores it. And well, it's only, as soon as you say it's only, you have already excused whatever you want to do. It is better for you to make your own actual changes. But if you haven't, or you have ignored everything for so long, you now don't have much of a choice, then yes, take the medication. The more drugs you take, the more issues that you might have in interaction between the two, or three, or four. This is the case of when you end up having to take all these medicines because you have so much wrong with you, and then you have all these side effects. So then you're taking these medicines for those side effects. If you haven't fixed your body ahead of time and now everything's breaking down, you're kind of stuck. Alcohol, always not going to be good for you, always. Herbs or supplements, this can cause more issues. If a doctor says, try to take X because this will help you, feel free, but you really need to try hard to do it with foods first. I myself do take a lot of supplements. I would like to bring it back down, but until I can make sure that I've got everything balanced, this is the better choice for me. But whole foods, actual foods, getting everything you need from the nutrients from the actual foods is best. But sometimes you might not be able to get everything. Like one of my issues, one of the best things dietary wise, mushrooms. Can't eat them. And so I have to find another way to get some of those benefits. Crazy, right? So then this is just a little graphic to show you how things can help or harm. I've talked before about certain things you consume might affect medications. And the one I normally talk about is right here, where it shows grapefruit, because there are certain medications that will tell you on the thing to not consume grapefruit. And that's because the medicine is based on a very particular enzyme in your body that is also triggered by grapefruit, which is also triggered by CBD because CBD uses the same enzyme as the grapefruit. So those are both things that if you have medication that says avoid grapefruit, you're supposed to avoid. And that is one way that it can actually mess up how the drug actually works with you. All right, so that's it. And here is your in-class assignment. So in-class assignment, what is it? In-class assignment number, I think it's number 11. I want you to answer these questions. What habits, as in dietary habits, do you have that may increase your chance of cancer? So take a good look at your consumption and see which of those might increase your chance of cancer. And then after learning about this, has it caused you to rethink some of your current dietary habits? And if so, what is it and what will you do about it? And if not, why not? So say that you drink, I don't know, 3 Cokes every day. And you constantly say, oh, well, I deserved it. I earned it. It's a treat or whatever. And so you keep having 3 Cokes every day. You might have just learned that the added sugar for that increases your inflammation issue, and that increases your chance of cancer. And then you could say, well, I learned that, so I'm not going to do that anymore. That I still want to have a Coke every now and again, but I'm going to limit to 1 a week. That would be valid. Or if you say, if not, you can say, you don't plan to change anything because I like what I do. Or you can say, I'm not going to change anything because I don't think anything I'm currently doing is increasing my chance of cancer. But I want you to actually really think about it because this is an important topic. Okay, so that is it. We're done. I'm going to take a break before I do the next video and make sure that you have done that energy budget thing where you've collected all the information on what you're eating for a minimum of 3 days. A full week would be best, but a minimum of 3 days, and all of your activities. Because next week, assuming tomorrow I get the go ahead that I get to come back to work, that's my doctor's appointment tomorrow, is more x-rays, getting the stitches removed, and getting my official allowed back to work. So assuming I get that allowed back to work, next week, we're going to be doing the energy budget stuff. So you need that information because all of that is going to go into your nutrition diary, which is going to be due very, very, very soon. So in class next week, I'm planning on doing a lot of work on the nutrition diary. But yeah, so I guess that's it. And peace.